Another question that I get very often is how can I be an avid reader of books? Now, you cannot read all books, and not all genres will be necessary to read. However, you need to begin by understanding the reason why you want to read. Why do you want to read? Is it knowledge acquisition? Is it just for leisure, fun, entertainment? Do you want to improve your vocabulary? Is it for a professional course, a degree, something that has to do with the advancement, all right, of your career? Is it to develop better communication skills? You must know the reason why you want to read. That's why people go to bookshops and they pick books that may interest them because of the cover, and then when they get home, they throw it away or drop it there, and for 3 years, it's gathering dust. I don't know if it has happened to you before. It has. Not all books must be read. So how do you get to develop the enthusiasm and build that stamina to be reading books? Now, number one is know why you want to read. Number two is know the topics that you want to read on. Fine, you like to read. You want to read. You want to gain knowledge. But knowledge concerning what? For example, there are some books you will never find in my library. I don't read romance novels. I don't read certain magazines. I read, much of my reading is around theological books, biographies, Bible commentaries, concordance, lexicons, of course, a few fictions here and there, but my core is theological books, and then Christian literature, some Christian books by various authors on specific topics. So I arrange my own study in such a way that commentaries from Genesis to Revelation are in some lines on my shelf, and then I have books by authors on specific issues. That's how I read. Another thing you want to also understand when it comes to learning to read is that you must set specific goals. All right, just put a note here. You must set specific goals. You must define why you want to read. You must determine how long you would read the book for. How long do you want to read this book? Some have a book, they've held it along to everywhere they are going. The book looks worn out, but they have not sucked the juice. They've not really read it. They've read only a chapter. For example, I remember this book, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. There are people that have the book and have not read it, and they are wondering why they've not, had a glimpse of the meaning of God's purpose for their lives and how to discover God's purpose. That's just an example. So you must set goals. Why do you want to read? How long do you want to read that book for? Now, when you set the goal, you want to check the book size. I advise beginners to not start with maybe a book by Dostoevsky, or a book that is maybe over 800 pages. You don't need that. Between 100 to 200 pages for starters. Start with that. And then most books, every good book should be divided into chapters, right? So you want to look at the chapters. How many chapters? If the book contains 10 chapters and you want to read the book for, say, 2 weeks, that's 14 days. How about a chapter a day? You see that? How about a chapter a day? Now, some chapters are likely going to be more voluminous in page number than some. It happens often, with authors that really want to express, themselves. So what do you do? If the chapter contains maybe up to 10 pages and it's a non-fiction book, meaning there is not much of storytelling there are principles there are things to think about there, it challenges your thought process and is specific. So what do? You can divide a chapter: morning maybe 3 pages, afternoon maybe 3 pages, night maybe 3 pages or 4 pages. Or when you wake up in the morning after your prayers and morning devotion, you can quickly dedicate an hour or 30 minutes to read that chapter, and then you're good. One of the biggest challenges to reading is inconsistency, or let's call it lack of discipline. I won't mention the number of books I've read this year. But trust me, of course, it's not just about the number of books. All right, you need to also think on the books and make sure that you are really gaining insight and not just trying to say, all right, I read 100 books, but you're still dumb. I hope you get what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about you now. So there are those that pride themselves in the number of books they have read, but we're not seeing transformation and change in their lives. That's not why you want to read, except it's just for fun and leisure. But if you mean business, then you don't really want to rush books. You grow in your pacing, your reading pacing most times as you read more. For example, a book of 200 pages, no matter how deep it looks, for some of us, in 3 weeks maximum, we're done with it and we've gotten what we want to get from it. That's all right. And there are some, that book is what they will read from January till April. You can't blame them, but what matters is that everybody is growing and making progress. All right. So there's no one size fits all. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's why I don't impose on people. But if I want to groom a person, I'm mentoring a person, and I notice the person seems to be scared of books, what should I do? I give you books and I'll tell you, I give you a deadline. That way, at least you're just beginning to cultivate the habit. So it's going to take a while, it's going to be challenging. But once you break that cycle and consistency enters it, then momentum begins to build. So another thing I would say is that you must choose carefully the kinds of books you want to read. And I would advise the best, maybe a better approach would be topically. Not that you read on faith on Monday and by Friday you are reading on how to make more money, and then in 2 weeks you're on personal development, and then in 3 days you are on neurosurgeon, you're on a medical book, anatomy, Gray's Anatomy, and then you move to K.A. Stroud, maybe engineering, mathematics or something. You don't need all that. You have to know what you want to learn part-time and then stick with it. Now, for some of us, some have what we call reading timetable, reading plan, reading schedule, where maybe in the morning you do 2 hours. Now, your kind of work, where you are in life, all right, the phase you are will determine your right how you go about that. For somebody who is raising a baby, you would need to know how to schedule your time. For someone else who just graduated university and has some 2-3 months before NYSC, you see, that's different also. You must know where you are, and then you must now determine to maximize your right available time, or you create the time. Actually, you can create time to read. Now, when you are reading, because some have broken that challenge of the desire, you now have the desire and you've even gotten books, but they stare you in the face, but you're not reading them. You seem to be tired and scared. No, don't let it scare you. What do you need to do? When you now open the book and you started reading, if you are the type that loves distraction or finds it easy to be distracted, then you want to maybe put your phone on silent for that time. All right, unless you do business. If you do business with your phone, it's going to be a bit challenging, but gradually you begin to develop, all right, the culture. If you keep looking at your phone, chatting with a friend, looking at your notes, playing around, making calls, playing games, checking who is passing, in your neighborhood and things like that, you will never finish a book. It will take a long time. All right, so what do? 100% focus. Do away with things that distract you, the noises around you, and then sit quietly on your table. Close your door. Maintain a good reading posture. If you lie down to read, the tendency that you will sleep or you'll be tired or distracted or weak exists, because when the body lies down for too long, after you have slept maybe for 8 hours through the night, then you sleep another 4 hours while reading a book. It doesn't really, all right, help. So what do? Sit well. Let me give an example. Now you sit, all right? You sit. And then you have a table in front of you. You have your, your book. And then you have maybe a notebook or a diary or your tab, somewhere you can type what you're learning, all right? And then you begin to engage with the author. So you are taking notes. You're recording the key points. Or sometimes I put it in my own words. It helps me to remember, even better. Another thing you want to do is that while you are reading, you can be looking up familiar words that you really don't know the meaning, but you have seen before, or you have heard it used, or you have even used it, but you're not sure of the meaning. That's a good time to go and to check, what does this word mean? Pick your dictionary. I have a dictionary or some dictionaries. Pick your dictionary and check, what does it mean? Because these days people use words that they do not even know their meanings. For example, somebody will say alignment and does not know what alignment means. An alignment can carry even different meanings depending on who is communicating. A mechanic would say alignment and they would mean something when it comes to a car. However, the idea behind it is what you want to understand, and then you will know how to apply it. All right. Now, you can also look up unfamiliar words. That's how to expand, your vocabulary. The words you see a word like astute. You don't say astute. Well, I guess astute means to be happy. That's not what it means. You want to check. All right. It says myopic. Myopic. What does myopic mean? You check it. Those things help you while you are reading. Now, another thing that I believe that would also help while you are reading is that when you get to places where the author seems to jolt you, the author says something, makes a statement that either contradicts your preconceived notions, the things you have, at one time believed, you don't say, oh, rubbish book. No. Calm down. Try to understand the context of the conversation. What was the author trying to communicate? And then see if it was the author that actually provided a superior evidence. All right. So that means that don't go to books with a mind already made up. That's not how to learn. That's not meekness. That's not teachability. That's wasting your time. You're open. All right. You want to learn. That's why you're reading the book. Some books remind you of the things you already know. Some books introduce you to things and even other authors that you do not already know. Words that you've never heard of before. What do? You open yourself to learn. Now, some ideas every author has their bias. Some ideas may not make sense to you now, but make sense later. And some ideas do not make sense. I've read books that I know I will never read again because of the things that are communicated and because they do not make sense. And so having done research, you find out, okay, it doesn't make sense. You jettison it. However, there are some authors that some of the things they say are very correct and some are not totally correct. It's just their bias. All right. That's why somebody will say, eat the hay, forget the sticks. If you keep critiquing every book you read harshly, then you will not learn and you will not be a good author, because you do not write books to fight people. All right. That's for those of you that may even have the desire to write later. You write books to help the people you're writing to. You see that? To bring them to see things in a better way. If you cannot add to knowledge and you cannot contribute to existing knowledge, at least make the life of the readers better. If you cannot help their thinking and you cannot affect their behavior, then it would have been better not to even release a book at all. Now, that said, summarize. After reading a book, summarize it. Don't start a book and not finish it. Try to finish it, then summarize. Now, there are some that do not begin from chapter 1. There is no rule that says begin from chapter 1 actually, but you can decide. I'm starting, for example, I like to start from chapter 1 of every book and I like to end in the last chapter. However, there are sometimes I just go out of curiosity to maybe 2 chapters to just quickly see what the person has to say concerning this, and then I go back to what I'm reading. I do that with the Puritans a lot. I do that with Christian apologetics, and then later I now go to start from the beginning. Another thing you want to do is ask questions so that you can clarify your understanding and make connections, all right, that helps you. Also, analyze, break down the complex ideas, evaluate the argument, and see what you can learn to add to what you already know. All right, that also works. Now, how do you retain? Having read a book, how do you retain? When you summarize it, try to review it. People read books and they drop it. Sometimes you can even go online, share with your social media, family, what you are learning. Oh, I'm reading this book by maybe Olanrewaju, Kolawole, that's me, maybe one of my 20-something books. These are the things I'm learning. I'm seeing this and that. Give a review. Now, what does that do? It helps you to, because now you are using your own words to communicate what you're learning, and maybe citing the author here and there in the points that really hit home. All right. Also, there are habits of good readers. For example, consistency. You don't read a book and then it takes another 10 months to read another. It will be very tough. It's like a wheel that needs to be continually oiled. So consistency in reading. After finishing a book, after a short while, pick another one and read. And then be open-minded. I've already mentioned that. Then be consistent, be persistent. Don't give up until you are done. Sometimes you think the juice is in chapter 1 because authors, most times start with very powerful things. Sometimes the juice is in the last chapter, and sometimes it's in the middle chapter. You cannot say the chapter that will bless you the most until you have read all the chapters. All right, but some chapters would always stick out than the others. It's just like that with reading. Now, that said, know your own reading style. Some prefer to use their devices, their phones. But if you are the type, for example, I'm a stickler to paperback, except I'm unable to order the book from America, from Amazon, and I do not see it anywhere in Nigeria, I tell you, I'm a stickler for paperback. That's when I will now go for the online format. I like to hold my paperback, mark it, treat it the way I like so that I can get the best. I hope that this helps you. And if there are other tips you feel would be beneficial to us, I'm willing to learn. Please share in the comment section and let me know how this helps you so that I may eventually decide to do more of short videos like this. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful time reading.